There it is.
All righty. How old are you, Trevor?
34.
Oh, okay.
2 years younger than me. Well, three. I'm 31 now, so
Yeah,
Well,
my wife said that, I was talking about you and I was talking about your boy, and you said, yeah, I said this young man, and he said, well, you're not so young if he has a kid. And I said, well, no, he's young. I saw this one cartoon once that had a couple of old couple walking down the street, and they were seeing everybody else, like a cop and the mailman, and they were all wearing diapers. They, because that's how you see everybody. Everybody looks like a kid when you're, you know what I mean? Like
uh-huh.
these hockey players. There's a hockey game to my wife's a big hockey fan. But I just watch it just, because actually it's our anniversary today, and
I think that's probably the most interesting sport.
Valentine's Day, and
is it Cupid? Do we celebrate Krishna's son, Cupid, or is it more
Cupid.
like on the Christian side?
No, Cupid is actually in the Vedic tradition.
All right, so we are celebrating Krishna's son.
Well, it's one of Krishna's sons was Cupid. Cupid personified. That was Pradyumna. It was Rukmini's son. Rukmini was Krishna's principal queen in Dwarka, and her first son was Pradyumna, and that son was stolen and kidnapped and thrown into the ocean, and a fish swallowed it, and the fish was caught by this one demon, and they cut off the fish's belly, and the baby came out. It was still alive.
Ooh.
That's a pretty amazing story. That's the story.
Yeah.
And then there's a whole story behind that, and after that as well. That kid got reunited with his mother later on. That's another part of the Bhagavatam that we'll read about later on. Anyway, I'm going to start this sharing screen here. I'll read the first text, and then we'll take turns reading the purports. Can everybody see that now or yet, or no?
It's black.
Okay, well, hold on a second. Share screen. What am I doing wrong here? Yeah, we were going to order a heart-shaped pizza because it's Valentine's.
Yeah. I've been putting leaf on my pizza.
What kind of
leaf? Color leaf.
Oh, Valentine's Day. Oh, okay. Now the screen's coming up. This is the internet connection is unstable.
It's on. It's on.
It's on. Okay.
Yeah, it's on.
All right. All right. My connection's not great, but anyway, I'll start reading the Sanskrit synonyms and translation, and then Alan, you can read the first because you were on first. You get to read the first paragraph, and then Trevor, you can read if you're done. I mean, if you want to, you can read. Take turns reading unless you're too busy. I know.
Oh, I'm good. I can read.
Okay, whatever you want to do. All right, text 17. Takta sadarman chanonum charanam buja hare bhajana apakshvo tapatet tato yadi yatratvak vadhabdaram adbuddha musyakim kovarta apto bhajatam swadharmataha. Synonyms: Tvaktva, having forsaken, Svadharman, one's own occupational engagement, Charnam Ambujam, the lotus feet, Hare of Hari, the Lord, Bhajam, in the course of devotional service, Apakva, immature, Ata, for the matter of Patet, falls down, Tatat, or Tata, from that place, Yadi, if, Yatra, whereupon Kva, what sort of Va, or, used sarcastically, Abdadram, unfavorable. Aput, shall happen. Amusya, of him. Kim, nothing. Hava arta, what interest? Apta, obtained. abhajatam of the non-devotees, swadharma, being engaged in occupational service. See here, Nārada Muni's being sarcastic. You know, the guru can do that to the disciple. He can be sarcastic, just like Krishna did to Arjuna. He's, you know, he made up so many reasons he didn't want to fight in the battle of Kurukshetra, and you know, after hearing all that, Krishna told him, "Yeah, no, you're speaking learned words, but you're a fool." He basically called him a fool. And as a spiritual master, I have every right to do that. And the disciple should actually look at himself and think, wow, how can I improve myself? How can I not be a fool anymore? That's good advice. So translation, one who has forsaken his material occupations to engage in the devotional service of the Lord may sometimes fall down while in an immature stage, yet there is no danger of his being unsuccessful. On the other hand, a non-devotee, though fully engaged in occupational duties, does not gain anything. Go ahead, Al.
As the purport is, as far as the duties of mankind are concerned, there are innumerable duties. Every man is duty bound, not only to his parents, family, members, society, country, humanity, other living beings, the demigods, etc., but also to the great philosophers, the poets, the scientists, etc. It is enjoined in the scriptures that one can relinquish all such duties and surrender unto the service of the Lord. So if one does so and becomes successful in the discharge of the devotional service unto the Lord, it is well and good. But it also so happens sometimes that one surrenders himself unto the service of the Lord by some temporary sentiment, and then in the long run, due to so many other reasons, he may fall down on the path of the service by undesirable association. There are so many instances of this in the histories. Bharata Maharaj, did I say that right?
Correct.
Was obliged to take his birth as a stag due to his intimate attachment to a stag. He thought to this stag when he died. As soon as such, in the next birth, he became a stag, although he did not forget the incident of his previous birth. Similarly,
Chitraketu
also fell down due to his offenses at the feet of Lord Shiva. But in the spite of all this, the stress is given here to the surrendering unto the lotus feet of the Lord, when even and there is a chance of falling down, because even though one falls down from the prescribed duties of the devotional service, he will never forget the lotus feet of the Lord. Once engaged in a devotional service of the Lord, one will continue the service in any circumstances. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that even in a small quantity of devotional service can save one from the most dangerous positions. There are many instances of such examples in the history. Jamila is one of them. His early life was a devotee, but in his youth he fell down. Still, he was saved by the Lord at the end.
I was just reading about this. You know, association is very important. That's why, you know, we have to have the association of devotees, and especially stronger association. If you know a devotee that's stronger, we go to the program, we associate, we do these Zoom classes, because association is everything. Even the demon Hiranyakashipu knew that. I mean, those demons were back then were very, very smart, and he was telling his son, you know, association is like a crystal, and the light comes through a crystal and it refracts the light into different colors. And so whatever we associate with, whoever we associate with, if you associate with a crackhead, you probably become a crackhead. If you associate with a drunk, you become a drunk. If you associate with devotees, you become a devotee. And if you're trying to progress in Krishna consciousness, you want to take advice from somebody like Nārada Muni, who'll tell you, look, you're not doing this right. You have to become humble and follow my instructions and not think that you are so smart. You know, so we have to take advice from somebody that's more advanced, and so we can get rid of all the coverings that are in our heart of false ego. we think we're the center of the universe. I was just talking about this to my wife, I was saying, like, if you think you're center of the universe, you think you're you have this false ego, which is called the hankaran, is like, you think you're the greatest person, then you're going to think everybody else is lesser than you. And you won't look at your own faults, but you'll look at the faults of other people, and you'll start criticizing other people. And that's called, and the more you envy other people like that, the less you become, the less advanced you become, and the more impediment you get. It's like a stone impediment in the path of progress to devotional service. So we have to get rid of all these impediments like envy and ahankar, thinking we're the doer, thinking we're the proprietor, thinking we're the best friend of every living entity, thinking we're doing so much. We're not doing anything. We're not the best friend. We're not the proprietor of anything. We don't do anything. We're not the supreme controller. We don't have anything. Not even our own bodies are ours. Krishna is the supreme proprietor. He's the supreme friend, and he's the supreme enjoyer of all living entities. And he is the friend of every living entity. And if you have that understanding, then you can strip away at all your own ideas that you are God and actually become humble. That's why the greatest devotees are the most humble. Like the great devotees in our sampradaya, the previous acharyas, they felt themselves lower than worms and stool. They were because the closer you get to Krishna, the more you are humble, because Krishna is so merciful and we're just so fallen. And so the more you feel like that, the more advanced you are. It's just kind of a paradox. Anyway, I'm going to read the next verse. Tasyaiva heto prayateta kovido nablabdyate yad brahmatam aparyada. Talabdate dukhavad anyata shukam. Kalena savatra gabhira ramhasa. Synonyms. Tasya, for that purpose, eva, only, heto, reason, paryateta, one should never, kovida, one who is philosophically inclined, nalabhyate, is not obtained yet, what, brahmatam, wandering, uparyada, from top to bottom, tat, that, labhyate, can be obtained, dukhavat, like the miseries, anyata, as a result of previous work, shukam, sense enjoyment, kalena, in course, savatra, everywhere, gabhira, subtle, ramhasa, progress. Translation: persons who are actually intelligent and philosophically inclined should endeavor only for that purposeful end which is not obtained even by wandering from the topmost planet, Brahmaloka, down to the lowest planet, Patala. As far as happiness derived from sense enjoyment is concerned, it can be obtained automatically in course of time, just as in course of time we obtain miseries, even though we do not desire them. Okay, go ahead, Trevor. You can read the whole paragraph.
Okay. Every man everywhere is trying to obtain the greatest amount of sense enjoyment by various endeavors. Some of them are busy engaged in trade, industry, economic development, political supremacy, etc. And some of them are engaged in fruitive work to become happy in the next life by attaining higher planets. It is said that in the moon, the inhabitants are fit for greater sense enjoyment by drinking samarasa, and the Pitraloka is obtained by good charitable work. So there are various programs for sense enjoyment, either during this life or in the next life after death. Some are trying to reach the moon or other planets by some mechanical arrangement, for they are very anxious to get into such planets without doing good work. But it is not to happen. By the law of the Supreme, different places are meant for different grades of living beings according to the work they might have performed. By good work only, as prescribed in the scriptures, one can obtain birth in good family, opulence, good education, and good bodily features. We see also that even in this life, one obtains a good education or money or bodily beauty. Similarly, in our next birth, we get such desirable positions only by good work. Otherwise, it would not so happen that two persons born in the same place at the same time are seen differently placed according to previous work. But all such material positions are not permanent. The positions in the topmost Brahmaloka and in the lowest Patala are also changeable according to our own work. The philosophically inclined person must not be tempted by such changeable positions.
Hold on a
He
second.
should try,
Okay, go ahead.
he should try to get, it's okay. He should try to get into the permanent life of bliss and knowledge, where he'll not be forced to come back again to the miserable material world, either in this or that planet. Miseries and mixed happiness are two features of material life, and they're obtained in Brahmaloka and in other lokas also. They are obtained in the life of the demigods and also in the life of the dogs and hogs. The miseries and mixed happiness of all living beings are only of different degree and quality, but no one is free from the miseries of birth and death, old age and disease. Similarly, everyone has his destined happiness also. No one can get more or less of these things simply by personal endowers. Even if they're obtained, they can be lost again. One should not therefore waste time with these flimsy things, but one should only endeavor to go back to Godhead. That should be the mission of everyone's life.
Yeah, when I was in high school, I used to read Emerson, and Emerson wrote this one essay. He used to write essays. Famous, in the mid 19th century, 150 years ago, 170 years ago. And he wrote an essay called Compensation, which is about karma. And he said, since time immemorial, human beings have been trying to separate the good from the bad, get all the happiness on one side of the table and then put all the unhappiness on the other side of the table, and then just take all the unhappiness off that side of the table. And he said, you can't do that. It's not possible, because everyone is destined for a certain amount of happiness. Everyone's destined to a certain amount of unhappiness. You cannot do that any more than you can get a light without darkness or an inside without an outside. He said, when you put your hand through the water reunites itself behind your hand. It's physically impossible to do that, but that doesn't stop everybody from trying to get the happiness that they want. And it's just a fruitless endeavor. Nobody can. Prahlad Maharaj, the saintly son of Hiranyakashipu, he said, if you want to be happy, just stop trying to be happy. Just stop trying. It's a paradox, but it's so true, because we waste our time trying to adjust material circumstances when you can't do that. You're already destined for happiness, and you're destined for a certain amount of suffering, unless you can actually become Krishna conscious and transcend the modes of material nature and be situated in surrender and go above the modes. You're always going to be affected by happiness and distress, the dualities of the material world. So, it says here, talking about my spiritual master, Bhakti Kirtananda, he used to quote this verse all the time from the highest material world, the highest planet in the material world, Brahmaloka, what he's talking about here. Abrahma Bhuvanaloka Punaravitanarjuna. From the highest planet down to the lowest planet, all are places of suffering, wherein repeated birth and death take place. So why would you try for a first-class prison cell when you could get out of the prison altogether by this Krishna consciousness? It just doesn't make any sense. Why would you try for happiness? You might be able to get some happiness by working hard, but it's just temporary, and it doesn't ameliorate the situation permanently. Get out of the material world. That's what's gonna, or just be Krishna conscious. It doesn't even matter if you're Krishna conscious where you are. You can be Krishna conscious anywhere, and you could be Krishna conscious in hell and still be happy. So that's what we should be endeavoring for.
Very well put.
So anyway, I'll read the next verse here, and Al can read the, let's see, how long is the purport? There's a couple purports there, 3. And you can read the first one, paragraph, and then Trevor can read the last 2, because those are shorter. Text 19. Navijano jatu katanchana vrajan Mukunda Sevyanyavad Angasam Sritam Smaran Mukundagri Upagunanam Punar Vihatumachan Na Rasagra Hojana. Synonyms: na, never; vai, certainly; jana, a person; jatu, at any time; katanshana, somehow or other; avrajat, does not undergo; mukunda sevi, a devotee of the Lord; anyavat, like others; anga, oh my dear; samsritam, material existence; samaram, remembering; mukunda angri, the lotus feet of the Lord; upagmanam, embracing; puna, again; vihatum, willing to give up; ichet, desire; na, never; rasagraha, one who has relished the mellow; jana, person. Translation: my dear Vyas, even though a devotee of Lord Krishna sometimes falls down somehow or other, he certainly does not undergo material existence like others, fruitive workers, etc., because a person who has once relished the taste of the lotus feet of the Lord can do nothing but remember that ecstasy again and again. Go ahead, Al.
The purport is a devotee of the Lord automatically becomes uninterested of the enchantment of the material existence because he is a rasa graha, one who has tasted the sweetness of the Lord lotus feet of Lord Krishna. There are certainly many instances where devotees of the Lord have fallen down due to uncongenial association, just like fruitive workers who are always prone to degradation. But even though he falls down, a devotee is never to be considered the same as a fallen karmi. A karmi suffers the result of his own fruitive reactions, whereas a devotee is reformed by chastisement directed by the Lord himself. The sufferings of an orphan and the sufferings of a beloved child of a kings are not one and the same. An orphan is really poor because he has no one to take care of him. But a beloved son of a rich man, and although he appears to be on the same level as the orphan, he is always under the vigilance of his capable father. A devotee of the Lord, due to the wrong association, sometimes imitates the fruitive workers. The fruitive workers want to lord it over the material world. Similarly, a neophyte devotee foolishly thinks of accumulating some material power in exchange for devotional service. Such foolish devotees are sometimes put into difficulty by the Lord himself. As a special favor, he may remove all the material paraphernalia by such an action. The bewildered devotee is forsaken by all the friends and relatives, and so on. He comes to his senses again by the Lord, mercy of the Lord, and is set right. To the right of the executive is devotional service.
To execute his devotional service.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Trevor.
In the Bhagavad Gita, it is also said that such fallen devotees are given a chance to take birth in a family of highly qualified brahmanas or in a rich mercantile family. A devotee in such a position is not as fortunate as one who is chastised by the Lord and put into a position seemingly of helplessness. The devotee who becomes helpless by the will of the Lord is more fortunate than those who are born in good families. The fallen devotee born in a good family may forget the lotus feet of the Lord, but because they're less fortunate, but the devotee who's put into a forlorn condition is more fortunate because he swiftly returns to the lotus feet of the Lord, thinking himself helpless all around. Pure devotional service is so spiritually relishable that a devotee becomes automatically uninterested in material enjoyment. That is the sign of perfection in progressive devotional service. A pure devotee continuously remembers the lotus feet of the Lord Sri Krishna and does not forget him even for a moment, not even in exchange for all the opulence of the three worlds.
Yeah, that happened to Prabhupada, actually. He lost his business. He had a business, he was trying to make money he had a pharmaceutical company in Allahabad, and somebody ransacked the place and stole all kinds of stuff. And he was laughing about it. He said, his son tried to say, why don't you go to Allahabad and try to rebuild your business? He said, no, this is Christian's arrangement. And then, he actually, his wife wasn't really that much involved with Krishna consciousness. She wasn't sympathetic for what he was doing, and because he was always trying to help the Gaudiya Math, his spiritual master's movement, but she didn't really take part. And so, he was working on his Bhagavatam, and he had a draft copy, and she sold his draft copy of the Bhagavatam, the only copy he had, for tea biscuits. And he was pissed. And he said, you're going to have to choose between me or tea. And she thought he was joking. And so he said, oh, well, I'll have to choose tea then. And he just walked out the door and he never came back. And the same thing happened to me, actually. And Prabhupada quoted this verse from the Bhagavatam. It's called Harashye Tadanam Shanai. Krishna takes everything away. Just like if a devotee becomes forlorn and helpless, then he has to depend on Krishna more than if he's in a rich mercantile family or something like that. Because, there's no atheists in the foxholes, they say. So if you depend on Krishna more, then you're in a better condition than even one who is materially more well off. But I lost both my jobs in 1980 after I blooped and I came back to Krishna consciousness because this one guy found out that I was, former devotee, even though I'd never met this devotee in my life. He was the janitor of the Chicago temple, and he was a friend of a friend that I used to party with in the 70s. And he somehow or other, he got my number and called me up. He tried to call me at my apartment, and he didn't get me because I wasn't there. I was at work. And so he called my parents' house. He somehow got my parents' number, and they gave him the number. I was working at a submarine sandwich shop, and he was like, he called me there, and I was eating meat and even serving out meat because I was crazy back then. And and so it's like, he said, what are you doing? You're working in a summer sham. What do you think about that? He said, well, I don't think it's a really big deal. He said, oh, you don't think it's a big deal? We're just talking, And so he sent me a PAL. I worked on the PALs previous to its opening in 1979. I was there in 1970, first part of 78, 9, and it was just a white dome. It didn't have all the gold filigree on it. And he sent me the PALs back to Gada, and I was just like blown away. I just sit and stared at it. He sent me all this stuff. He also sent me a picture of the man with the cow's head and the cow with the man's head who was chopping off the cow with the man's head on it. And it's about karma, And he wrote in the margins of the picture, he said, don't say we didn't warn you.
I love that depiction. I was looking for it online. I couldn't find it.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. I can find it.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions? We got less than a minute left.
I have one real quick. I was gonna say, if anybody ever thinks if they are God, you mentioned themselves,